Oblivion would be a suitable candidate for being one of the most hyped games of all time. The amount of press coverage and anticipation it received was mind-boggling, but at the same time quite understandable. After all, its predecessor, Morrowind, was quite decent, with an interesting story, world, atmosphere, but the actual system and design restrained it from being a truly good game. I myself was very excited at the prospect of the next title, hoping that these issues could be fixed. It was probably the first time that I really began following media coverage for a video game. I learned about a new AI system, new combat system, promise of more interesting NPCs and more freedom, and naturally this heightened my excitement. These points were hammered to us over and over by the marketing team, and so when I went to pick up my copy, I was expecting quite a lot. In the end, I was disappointed by the game. It was not an improvement on Morrowind. Where old mistakes were patched, new ones were formed. But the main glaring problem with the game is that it is nowhere near as interesting and organic as the world of Morrowind. The strange, unique world with a tense political atmosphere and intriguing main plot made Morrowind immersive. As soon as you were launched into the first town and heard the distant animal cries and laid eyes on the huge silt-strider insects, the player really became a part of the world. Of course, the problem with Morrowind was that this feeling didn't last long enough. The dull, static NPCs and the very linear quest lines made Morrowind a less compelling game than it could have been. Oblivion fixes neither of these problems. Let's start with the NPC system, which has been hyped to no end. The Radiant AI system was set to give NPCs real lives to follow, and yet the end result is not much different than an average NPC schedule script, common in many other games. Even further, it results in annoying and repetitive NPC dialogues with one another, which sound and look as artificial as they can possibly be. You will agree when you see two NPCs awkwardly line up to have the same conversation about mud crabs for the 10th time. Player interaction with the NPCs is just as bad. Instead of Morrowind's text-based interaction, NPCs are now fully voiced. On its own, that's obviously not a problem, and good voice acting can lend personality to characters in addition to the writing style. However, the voice acting in Oblivion falls flat. The voices themselves are of no great acting quality, but it appears that so much of the budget was spent on hiring the voices for the king and his son, that regular NPC voices were limited to just a few actors. As a result, a lot of dialogue and voices are repeated throughout the game. You'll find many characters with identical voices. Even prominent characters in the main questline curiously have the same voices as homeless beggars. If that's not bad enough, sometimes characters will change voices in the middle of conversations. And it seems, due to the constraints of recording voice, the actual dialogue has been shortened considerably. There is none of the detail found in Morrowind's NPC dialogue. Characters speak in short sentences. In the end, it seems that in trying to solve the problem with Morrowind's NPC system, Oblivion simply creates new problems, and the NPCs remain as dull and lifeless as they were in Morrowind, with the exception that they now walk around town, sleep, and randomly stare at walls for hours. The number of NPCs also seems to have shrunk, and this has an embarrassing effect when you're in the Imperial City, which is supposed to be a bustling, heavily populated city, an important location for trade, government, and education, and yet you only notice a few random characters going to the bar. Where are the crowded streets? The other main issue with Morrowind was its linear plot lines. Yes, you could join different factions or ignore the main quest, but at any time you set yourself on a quest path, it was mostly a linear one. Oblivion does not differentiate from this formula. There are a few choices of freedom in the way that you play the game. The main quest is a set path, and you either follow it, or you can wait and then follow it later. Speaking of the main quest, Morrowind was praised for the way you could simply ignore the main quest and do your own thing. This made perfect sense in Morrowind. In the beginning, you're given instructions to deliver a package with no real urgency attached to it. The quest givers are merely trying to piece together a puzzle. In Oblivion, however, the world is under attack. It makes absolutely zero sense to ignore the main plot, when people are supposed to be dying every minute, being attacked by the invading monsters, and yet the game simply pauses for you as you pick flowers for the Mages Guild. Kvatch simply waits and remains under siege for hours and days without ever crumbling, until you decide to head on over yourself. What worked in Morrowind makes no sense at all in Oblivion. Even that one minor choice presented to you, which is to follow the main quest or to ignore it, isn't a choice at all, since there's no consequence. If you ignore it, the main quest will simply wait until you're ready. Speaking of main quest, let's go into more detail about how it all plays out. One of the main elements of the plot is that the Oblivion Gates lead you to another dimension called Oblivion. Rather than doing anything interesting with this concept, Oblivion is just another rendition of Hell, with tall towers and lava, just like any other video game. One of the developers of Oblivion once commented on how he would find Oblivion Gates and enter them to see what lay beyond. Clearly he was joking, as every Oblivion Gate is exactly the same. A medium-sized landmass surrounded by lava with some towers scattered around. To destroy the gate, there are some predictable objectives to be completed. It is somewhat interesting the first time, but quickly becomes repetitive. Let's talk about graphics, since that was another highly anticipated part of the game. With an appropriate number of user-made mods, Oblivion can look downright amazing, provided you have the right machine for it. Just like Morrowind, users will no doubt keep Oblivion's visuals up to date. Already Bethesda's clunky face and body models have been replaced as well. The unmodded Oblivion looks less impressive, especially when compared to many of the graphics giants released around the same time. The draw distance has been extended from Morrowind, but to pay for it, any land which is far away from you looks like mush. Grass and trees appear out of thin air as you go near them. Character faces are dull and rarely show any expression. There's nothing stylistically impressive about the visuals either. There are no silt striders to gape at, nor are there any towns with interesting and alien structures like Morrowind. Oblivion's environment is pure fantasy cliché, endless forests and green trees, dark blue caves, and cities with no real personality, unlike Morrowind. Combat has been improved so far as real-time action combat is concerned. Morrowind's combat was not fun, pure and simple. And Oblivion fixes this, but still becomes boring within a short while. The weapons and stats have all been simplified, so don't expect the same versatility in the game system. Reliance on stats on the whole has been downplayed in favor of mini-games such as lockpicking games and persuasion games, the latter of which is too silly for words. It appears that Bethesda wants to be a free-roaming action title, like Grand Theft Auto, and I wonder how much simplification will appear in the next Elder Scrolls game. The music in the game is well done, though the lyrical main theme from Morrowind is butchered through an almost laughable brass rendition and cliched battle style. However, there are some lovely melodies and orchestrations present, though they may be derivative of some of Jeremy Soul's other projects. Oblivion is not a bad game overall. Most people would probably enjoy it for quite a bit. But those of us who have already played Morrowind and Daggerfall before it, for us, Oblivion does not provide the upgrade that we were hoping for. Instead, it heads in a different direction and makes its own mistakes there instead. It does not live up to the mountain of hype it generated, and the marketing buzz appeared to mostly consist of exaggerations as well. As it stands, it's a bland and uninspired title which offers none of the unique character that Morrowind provided, while containing the same number of problems.